Mayday, Mayday. This is November Echo 742 requesting immediate assistance. The crackling radio transmission pierced through the executive boardroom, freezing everyone in place. But for Eliza Harrington, CEO of Skyline Enterprises, that voice, that call sign, sent her world spinning back 12 years to a storm-tossed night and the man she tried desperately to forget. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to catch more emotional journeys like this one. Your support means everything to this channel. The morning had begun like any other for James Mitchell. Dawn barely breaking over the suburban landscape as he gently shook his 11-year-old daughter awake. "Rise and shine, lily pad," he whispered, using the nickname that always made her smile, even through sleepy eyes. "5 more minutes, Dad," she mumbled, burrowing deeper under her constellation-patterned comforter. "No can do, kiddo. Big day today." He pulled open the curtains, letting the first rays of sunlight spill into the room. "Remember? Career day at school." Lily bolted upright, suddenly wide awake. "You're still coming, right? You promised." James nodded, his heart squeezing at her eagerness. Wouldn't miss it for the world. What he didn't tell her was how much it cost him to make that promise. How he'd had to beg his supervisor at the hardware store for the morning off, knowing it meant working a double shift tomorrow. How he'd rehearsed what to say about his current job, trying to make stocking shelves and managing inventory sound exciting to a classroom of 5th graders. How he'd carefully avoided mentioning what he used to be. The kitchen was their morning battlefield, a chaotic dance of cereal boxes, hastily made lunches, and the perpetual search for matching socks. Single parenthood had taught James efficiency, if not grace. He'd learned to braid hair while simultaneously quizzing spelling words, to detect a fever with the back of his hand while signing permission slips. "Dad, can I wear my blue dress? The one with the pockets?" Lily called from her room. "The one we just washed yesterday?" "Sure thing." He flipped a pancake with practiced ease, adding it to the growing stack. "But hurry up, these pancakes aren't going to eat themselves." As they ate breakfast, Lily peppered him with questions about his presentation. "Are you going to tell them about the hardware store? Or maybe about how you fixed Mrs. Grayson's sink last month?" James smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I thought I'd talk about problem solving. How every job needs someone who can think on their feet. Like you did when you were a pilot?" Lily asked innocently, making James freeze mid-bite. He set down his fork carefully. "That was a long time ago, Lily. But it was so cool. Mom always said you were the best pilot she'd ever." She stopped abruptly, realizing her mistake. Mentions of Rebecca always changed the atmosphere, like a sudden pressure drop before a storm. James reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "It's okay to talk about your mom. That life is behind us now." What he didn't say was how the sky still called to him. How he sometimes woke from dreams where he was soaring above the clouds, hands steady on the controls, the world spread out beneath him like a patchwork quilt. How he'd walk outside on clear nights just to look up at passing planes, their navigation lights blinking like distant stars. How he'd given it all up without a second thought when Rebecca died, because nothing mattered more than the little girl who needed him grounded. Across town, in a gleaming high-rise that dominated the city skyline, Eliza Harrington was already on her 3rd cup of coffee. As CEO of Skyline Enterprises, the aviation technology company she'd built from the ground up, her days started early and ended late. "The board meeting starts in 20 minutes, Ms. Harrington," her assistant reminded her, placing a tablet with the day's agenda on her desk. "And Mr. Zhao from the Beijing office is waiting online too." Eliza nodded, already scanning the quarterly reports. "Tell him I'll call back this afternoon. And make sure the prototype schematics are ready for the presentation." At 42, Eliza had achieved everything she'd ever wanted professionally. Skyline was revolutionizing aviation safety systems, their technology implemented in commercial airlines across 6 continents. Industry magazines had called her visionary, brilliant, unstoppable. None of them called her happy. She glanced at the small frame on her desk, the only personal item in her minimalist office. A younger version of herself stood beside a sleek training aircraft, flight helmet tucked under her arm, grinning with the unbridled joy of someone who had just discovered flight. Before corporate takeovers and profit margins had replaced the simple pleasure of defying gravity. Before James Mitchell had walked away, taking her heart with him. The intercom buzzed. The board members are gathering in the conference room, Ms. Harrington. On my way. She straightened her tailored suit, locked away the memories, and stepped into the role she'd perfected, the untouchable CEO who never let emotion cloud her judgment. She couldn't have known that across town, fate was setting a collision course. Career Day at Westridge Elementary was organized chaos. Parents in various professional attire milled about the gymnasium, setting up small displays while excited children darted between them. James stood awkwardly by his modest table, which featured a few tools and a poster Lily had helped him make. Problem solver extraordinaire, it proclaimed in glitter glue and marker. Beside him, a surgeon unpacked an actual stethoscope for demonstrations, while across the aisle, a firefighter arranged a child-sized helmet and jacket for try-ons. "Dad, look!" Lily tugged at his sleeve, pointing toward the entrance. Someone brought a real pilot's uniform. James followed her gaze, his breath catching as he saw the Skyline Enterprises logo on the display. A young man in a crisp pilot's uniform was setting up a sophisticated flight simulator. "Can we go see?" Lily was already pulling him forward, oblivious to his reluctance. "Lily, wait," but she was already weaving through the crowd, her excitement propelling her forward. The Skyline representative looked up as they approached. "Hello there. Want to try your hand at flying?" "Yes, please." Lily climbed onto the simulator seat without hesitation. "My dad used to be a pilot." The young man glanced at James with newfound interest. "Is that so? Commercial?" "Search and rescue," James replied tersely. "A lifetime ago." "Dad was the best," Lily continued, adjusting the simulator controls with surprising familiarity. "He saved 23 people during Hurricane Evelyn. There was even a newspaper article about it." James felt heat rising to his face. "Lily, I'm sure the gentleman doesn't." "Actually, that's fascinating," the representative interrupted. "Skyline is currently developing new navigation systems specifically for rescue operations. Our CEO is particularly passionate about that division." "Is that so?" James replied noncommittally, watching Lily manipulate the controls with natural ease that made his chest ache with pride and loss. "In fact," the young man continued, checking his watch, "Ms. Harrington is supposed to stop by today. She visits local schools as part of our community outreach program. She was a pilot herself before founding the company." James felt the blood drain from his face. "Harrington? Eliza Harrington?" Before the representative could answer, a commotion at the gymnasium entrance drew everyone's attention. A woman in an impeccable business suit had arrived, flanked by assistants and immediately swarmed by teachers and administrators. Even from across the room, James would have known her anywhere. The confident stance, the precise way she tucked her hair behind her ear when listening intently, the slight tilt of her head when considering a question. Eliza. 12 years had changed them both, but in that moment, the intervening time seemed to collapse. He was suddenly back in that cramped rescue helicopter cockpit, rain lashing against the windshield as they searched for survivors in the hurricane's aftermath. Eliza beside him as co-pilot, her voice steady in his headset despite the turbulence threatening to tear them from the sky. "Dad?" Lily's voice pulled him back to the present. "Are you okay? You look weird." "I'm fine, sweetheart." He squeezed her shoulder. "Let's check out some of the other displays." But it was too late. Eliza was making her way through the gymnasium, stopping at each table, engaging with the children. And with each step, she drew closer to where they stood. James considered retreat, but Lily was engrossed in the flight simulator, her hands moving over the controls with the same instinctive grace he once possessed. He couldn't pull her away now. So he waited, heart hammering against his ribs, as the woman he'd once loved with every fiber of his being approached. Eliza was in CEO mode, smiling, shaking hands, asking thoughtful questions about career aspirations. But as she neared the skyline display, something made her falter. A familiar profile, the set of broad shoulders she'd once known as well as her own reflection. Their eyes met across the simulator, and the gymnasium seemed to fall away. James? His name escaped her lips before she could stop it. Hello, Eliza. His voice was deeper than she remembered, roughened by years and experiences she knew nothing about. The Skyline representative looked between them, sensing the sudden tension. You two know each other? Neither answered. They were locked in a moment outside of time, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. It was Lily who broke the spell, looking up from the simulator with curious eyes. Dad? Who's this? James cleared his throat. Lily, this is Ms. Harrington. She's an old friend. You're the CEO? Lily's eyes widened with admiration. That's so cool. Did you know my dad when he was a pilot? Eliza's gaze softened as she looked at the girl. I did, yes. We flew together. In the hurricane? Lily pressed, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing between the adults. Yes. Eliza's voice grew quiet. In the hurricane. What remained unspoken was how that night had changed everything. How they'd returned from that rescue mission exhilarated, alive with the knowledge they'd saved lives against impossible odds. How James had proposed in the hangar, still in his flight suit, unable to wait another moment to ask the question that had been on his lips for months. How 3 weeks later, he'd walked away without explanation, leaving Eliza with a returned ring and a shattered heart. Miss Harrington? An assistant appeared at her elbow. The principal is waiting to introduce you for your presentation. Eliza nodded, professional mask sliding back into place. Of course. She turned to James, composure perfect except for the slight tremor in her hands. It was unexpected to see you, James. Likewise. His voice was carefully neutral. Perhaps we could catch up afterward? The question surprised them both. Before James could respond, the school's fire alarm blared to life, its shrill warning cutting through the gymnasium. Confusion rippled through the crowd as teachers began organizing their students. Everyone remained calm, the principal called over the noise. This is not a drill. Please proceed to the designated evacuation areas. James immediately shifted into action, a response ingrained from years of emergency training. Lily, stay close. He looked to Eliza. Do you know where the nearest exit is? She nodded, already scanning the room with the same analytical precision she'd once applied to flight paths. This way. Together, they helped guide children and parents toward the doors, their old partnership falling into place with unsettling ease. Outside, as the school population gathered on the playing fields, the reason for the alarm became apparent. Smoke billowed from the science wing, thick and ominous. The chemistry lab, a teacher explained frantically to the arriving firefighters. There was a special demonstration for Career Day. The fire chief assessed the situation, his expression grim. We've got most of the building cleared, but we're missing one group, a teacher and 5 students who were in the planetarium for an astronomy presentation. The planetarium? Lily tugged at James's sleeve, panic in her eyes. Dad, that's where Sophie went. She's my best friend. James felt his heart constrict. The planetarium was in the same wing as the fire, possibly already cut off by smoke and flames. The fire chief was coordinating his team. The hallway's blocked. We're working on an alternate approach, but it'll take time. There's a maintenance access through the roof, James said suddenly, years of structural assessment for rescue operations surfacing in his memory. It leads directly to the planetarium dome. The chief looked at him skeptically. And you know this how? He was search and rescue, Eliza interjected, her voice carrying the authority that had built a multinational corporation. One of the best pilots and tactical coordinators in the program. The chief hesitated, then nodded. Show us on the building plans. Minutes later, James found himself climbing a fire ladder to the school roof, equipped with an oxygen mask and communication device. The situation was eerily familiar, assessing risks, calculating odds, pushing aside fear to focus on the lives at stake. I'm coming with you, Eliza had insisted, following him up the ladder despite his protests and the fire chief's objections. This isn't your responsibility, James had argued. Her eyes had flashed with the determination he remembered so well. Neither is it yours anymore. But here we are. Now they crouched on the roof, locating the maintenance hatch that would lead them to the trapped group. Smoke curled around them as James worked the rusted lock. Why did you leave? The question burst from Eliza without warning, as if the danger had stripped away 12 years of carefully constructed barriers. James's hands stilled momentarily. This isn't the time. We're about to enter a burning building. I'd say it's exactly the time. Her voice was steady despite the smoke swirling around them. The lock gave way under his efforts. James met her eyes through the clear panel of her oxygen mask. Rebecca was pregnant. The words hung between them, heavier than the smoke. My high school girlfriend. We'd been broken up for years, but... He swallowed hard. One night, after a particularly rough rescue mission, I was in a bad place. She was too. It was a mistake, but when she told me about the baby, I couldn't, he broke off. I couldn't do to my child what my father did to me. Disappear. Choose something else over family. Understanding dawned in Eliza's eyes. You never told me. How could I? We were planning our future, and suddenly I had this other future I was responsible for. The pain in his voice was raw, undiminished by time. I thought making a clean break was kinder than asking you to accept a ready-made family with a woman from my past always in the picture. That wasn't your decision to make alone, Eliza said quietly. Before James could respond, the radio crackled. Mitchell, what's your status? Conditions are deteriorating fast. We're entering now, James replied, pushing open the hatch. Let's go. They descended into the smoke-filled building, following the maintenance passage that led to the planetarium. The familiar rhythm of an emergency operation settled over them, checking corners, moving efficiently, communicating with minimal words. They found the teacher and students huddled beneath the planetarium's dome, wet cloths pressed to their faces. Relief washed over the group at the sight of rescuers. We're going to get you out, James assured them, his calm voice steadying the frightened children. Follow Ms. Harrington's instructions exactly. Among the students, a small girl with braided hair looked up with tear-filled eyes. Are you Lily's dad? James knelt beside her. You must be Sophie. Lily's very worried about you. Let's get you back to her, okay? The evacuation was challenging but methodical. Eliza led the way with 2 children, while James followed with the teacher and remaining students. The smoke grew thicker as they retraced their path, flames now visible through a nearby window. They were halfway to the roof access when a thunderous crack split the air. Part of the ceiling collapsed ahead of them, blocking their escape route. Alternate route, James said immediately, his mind racing through the building's layout. There's a service stairwell 20 meters back. It should lead to the east wing. Eliza nodded, already turning the group around. No hesitation, no panic, the same unshakable presence that had made them an exceptional rescue team years ago. The stairwell was their salvation, relatively clear of smoke as they descended. They emerged into a corridor where firefighters immediately surrounded them, leading them to safety. Outside, in the fresh air, parents rushed forward to reclaim their children. Lily threw herself into James's arms, sobbing with relief, then pulled back to include Sophie in their embrace. "You saved them," she whispered, looking up at her father with new understanding.